What's up, guys? It's Jordan with the Laundromat Resource Podcast. This is show 177, and I'm pumped you're here today because today is a very special episode. And if I can just take a second to be a little transparent, I was a little apprehensive to do this episode at first because if I'm honest, then I will say that whenever I do solo episodes, so many of you guys, first of all, I should just acknowledge this. So many of you guys reach out with such positive feedback, and I really appreciate that. But I hear more on the solo episodes. I'll call it criticism. I don't know that it really is constructive, but it's criticism on the solo episodes. So they're always tough for me to do it. However, I was going through my notes, and I'll tell you how this episode came about here in a second, but I was going through my notes on this, or just I'll call it a resource because it's my resource podcast, my resource on this that I utilize personally. And I just got super jazzed up. And this episode, for those of you who are in it to win it, is going to be mega valuable for you. And it may not be, it probably won't be all new information for you. However, I have a little framework that I use that I want to go through with you. I want to tell you step by step exactly how I go through it, how I utilize it, how you can utilize it to achieve big things. But real quick, before we jump into that, I just want to say, I know that the news episodes surprisingly popular. So thank you again for the positive feedback about the news episodes, despite my terrible news anchorness and a lack of jokes. Sorry, Patrick, again. They'll be coming back around. Just been a lot going on over here, but I haven't forgot about you guys. I haven't forgot about the news, and we want to stay up to date on what's going on. And there's some really cool stuff going on. So keep an ear out for the news coming back at you. Okay, so let me tell you how this episode came about. Then we'll jump into the actual content of this. I was sitting in a virtual meeting, virtual room with four guys earlier this week. One of them was worth $200 million. One of them was worth $52 million. One of them was worth $22 million, and the other one was worth $18 million. So by all measures, all four of these guys just crushing it in life, and all four of them significantly ahead of where I am currently. I have no shame to say that. So I was loving every second of hanging out with these guys and just hearing from them and how they got there. And actually what we were doing in this meeting, or I'll just call it a meeting, what we were doing in this meeting was they were actually going through their progression of going from essentially zero net worth to what they're worth now and what their annual incomes are now. And some of these, all four of these guys are making well into the seven figures a year, and 7 and 8 figures a year, and are just, by all means, they're just kind of crushing it. And one of the questions I had was, how? I think it's a question everybody would have, right? Like, how did you do that? How did you get there? And a couple things really jumped out at what they said. They all had their own takes and everything, but a couple things really jumped out at me, and it's kind of what inspired me to do this episode here, because, as I've reflected on my journey to get where I'm at, it's been, if you've been around here at all, you've heard my story at all, it's been a very rocky journey. But I was just having a conversation with my wife just last week, and we're talking about kind of where we came from and how things went real south, and how basically we've gone back down to zero 2 different times now in life. And yet we're kind of looking around at our life right now, and we're like, man, we are blessed. I mean, there's like no other way to say it. We are blessed. We're living a life that many people dream of, and we feel very grateful for that life, and just feel like we have a very rich life in all kind of aspects of what that word means. So anyways, as these guys were telling their, quote unquote secrets to success here, 2 main things stood out to me. Number one, And this is one of the core values that I shared a couple episodes back when I was talking about the Laundromat Playbook. But clarity came out. Know what you want out of life. Have some clarity of what direction you're going, what you're aiming towards. There's all kinds of inspirational quotes by all kinds of inspirational people, and even Winnie the Pooh has a quote on this, right? Of like, know where you're going, which is the famous Alice in Wonderland quote, right? Like, if you don't know where you're going, any path will do, or something like that, right? Which I think is a misquote. I'm misquoting the misquote of that. But anyways, so clarity came out. Super important to know where you're going. And in fact, I am so convinced, not just by this talk that we had today, but I've been more and more convinced, and maybe this was just the nail in the coffin for me on clarity, but I'm pretty convinced that it's nearly impossible to build a life that you want to build unless you do it intentionally. And in order to do it intentionally, you've got to know what it is you want life to look like. So we're going to talk about that today. And then the other big point that jumped out on me at me today in that or this week in that conversation is that we're probably all thinking too small, right? Our goals that we have are probably too small. And came up a couple different times. Like, there's a quote, I'm going to butcher it too, but it's basically like, we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in a decade. And I think that that's super true. So kind of with those two things combined, I want to share with you my framework. This is coming out right at the end of 2024. And maybe you're listening to it and it's the end of the year, whatever year, or maybe you're listening to it sometime in the middle of the year. It doesn't matter. But this is just timely for me to talk about this as we start thinking about New Year's resolutions and goals. And this is sort of a natural time when I'm actually recording this and when it's actually being released. But this is for any point in time that you are ready to make a change and start building the life of your dreams. That's what this is about, right? And listen, we're the Laundromat Resource Podcast over here. But laundromats are just one vehicle that can help you achieve your goals. I think personally, they're a great vehicle, especially if your goals involve financial freedom, leaving your 9 to 5, anything that has to do with cash flow. Laundromats, tough to beat, right? But there are many different vehicles. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about goal setting and the framework that I personally use in order to help me set goals, right? So, but before we get into that, specifically goal setting, like I said, this is the end of the year here. This is a natural time, and wherever you're at can be a natural time, right? Wherever you're at in the year when you're listening to this can be a natural time, but this is a natural time of year, right at the end of the year, the beginning of a new year, to reflect on the past and project forward by setting goals. Okay. So I want to talk about them in that order. So before we get into goal setting, I want to talk about reflection, and I encourage you to actually do this. Okay. This is like not one of those episodes where, somebody's telling their story and you're getting some inspiration. Maybe you're taking some notes down on some practical stuff they're sharing that you can implement in your business or in your search for your first laundromat. This is like this is a homework assignment. Okay. This is something you should actually sit down, carve out some time and do it. Okay. Carve out some time and do it. Okay. So let's start with reflection here. Again, we got reflection and projection, but let's start with reflection. Here's where I start. Okay. And it comes back to that clarity question, right? That core value of the Laundromat Playbook. Go back and listen to that episode if you want to. It was a couple episodes ago. Or check out laundromatresource.com/playbook. But clarity. Okay. So I start this sort of reflection time generally at the end of the year with this question. Was I clear on what I wanted to accomplish this year? Okay. Now, this is going to look like or sound like basically a flow chart. Okay. I'm going to ask a series of yes or no questions that are going to get me or get you, if you go through this, to a core question that's going to help you be able to move forward on the projection side of this. Okay. So as we're reflecting, we are trying to refine the results that we got from this year. Basically, what does life look like now? Is this the ideal life we envisioned? And if not, how do we get there? Okay. And that's what this flow chart is going to help us to figure out. Okay. So the first question is, was I clear on what I wanted to accomplish this year? For the vast majority of us, the answer is going to be no. Okay. I think, again, I am more and more convinced that the thing that separates, one of the big things, I should say, that separates super successful people with normal people is that very successful people almost across the board are very clear on what they want out of life. And it reminds me of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, right? And he talks about having a definiteness of purpose. And there's a couple of those like old timey books that talk about success that, essentially say something to the effect of, once you get very clear on what it is that you want, things tend to orient themselves around helping you accomplish that, right? Now, that can be on a spectrum of woo-woo to not so woo-woo, depending on who you're talking to or what you're reading, and how you feel about sort of the woo-woo side. The universe is conspiring to help you get the thing that you set your mind to, or here's the reality is that once you get very clear on that. So here's an example I'll give you, a very silly, dumb example. But in high school, I loved Mountain Dew. I drank Mountain Dew. I literally, this is, if I die early, we can probably just attribute it to this. But literally in high school, I would drink a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew per day. I would just bring it to school like it was a water bottle and just drink it all throughout the day. That was back when 2-liter bottles were like 89 cents. But anyways, dating myself. But here's what happened is that I was very clear about Mountain Dew is my thing, right? And guess what happened? All of a sudden, I started getting all kinds of Mountain Dew stuff, right? When people, would see Mountain Dew pajama bottoms, they'd be like, perfect for Jordan. I'm going to get them for him. So I've probably got 3 pairs, or maybe I still have a couple actually, of Mountain Dew, pajama bottoms, right? Or Mountain Dew car fresheners, or Mountain Dew t-shirts, underwear. I got all of it. I mean, you name it, Mountain Dew, it's came my way. I'm seeing something similar happen with my daughter right now. Actually, she's 11. She loves Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, right? She gets so much Lilo and Stitch stuff because she made that her thing, her one thing. That's going to come up more, right? She made that her one thing. So people just think of her when Stitch stuff comes up and they just want to give it to her, right? Now, very silly examples, but the principle kind of remains the same, right? Once you get very clear on what it is that your one thing is, right? And a lot of this will come from the book, The One Thing, which I highly recommend you read. And by the way, as we go through this flow chart and we get to the end of some of these branches, I'm going to give you some resources that you can check out to help you process through this a little bit more too. But the one thing is going to be sort of foundational in all of this. But once you kind of come to that one thing, here's what I want life to look like someday. People just think of you, and stuff just kind of, your mind is set on that. And so the things that can help you accomplish that jump out at you more. It just happens. And, again, there's a spectrum of woo-woo-ness that you can be on, and you can choose to be anywhere on that spectrum from, just strictly scientific to as woo-woo as you want. Okay. No judgment here either way. Okay. So anyways, was I clear on what I wanted to accomplish this year? Again, the vast majority of us, the answer to that one's probably no. Okay. And we're going to come back to, if your answer is no, we're going to come back to that here in a little bit. But let's start off, again, this is sort of a a flow chart here. So let's start off. If you say yes, I was pretty clear on what I wanted to accomplish this year. Well, then the next natural question is going to be, did I accomplish it? Okay, I was pretty clear on what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy 10 laundromats. I hear that all the time. I wanted to buy 10 laundromats. Did I accomplish that? Okay. So let's say the answer was yes. Whatever your goal was, you were clear on it and you accomplished it. The next question to ask was my goal too small? Okay. Now that's something we're going to reflect on. Did I set a goal that was too small? And that's why I was able to accomplish it. If the answer to that question is yes, I set a goal, I accomplished it, and upon reflection, that goal was too small. Here's sort of the base of this branch of the tree. What would I have to do to 10x that goal next year? What would I have to do to 10x that goal next year? Okay, now that can feel super scary to say, oh my gosh, like, my goal was to get 10 laundromats this year. Somehow, miraculously, I did it. Was it too small? I guess so. How could I get 100 next year? That sounds crazy, right? Or I want $1,000 of passive income, or through a laundromat passive, quote unquote, income, right? And you accomplished it and you realize, that was too small. How could you get 10,000 a month? Or if it was 10,000, how could you get 100,000? And what that does is, by asking, how can I 10x that goal? What that does is it causes you to think differently. And the way that it clicked with me was, I noticed that when I had goals that I wanted to set higher and higher, I would go straight for the brute force method, right? I would put in more effort. I would do more of the same. I would do more podcast episodes. I would do, I'd put out more advertising for a wash and fold, whatever it was. I'd try to up the effort, right? Up the investment. However, when you ask yourself, how can I 10x my goal? It's really hard to brute force 10xing your goal. Whatever your goal is, it's really hard to just brute force, do more of the same and 10x your goal. What it forces you to do is to think differently, right? You've got to think differently if you're going to 10x your goal. If I bought 10 laundromats this year and I wanted to buy 100 next year, I can't just go around doing the same things that I did to get 10 and expect to get 10 times the results to get 100 laundromats. I've got to think of different ways to do it, right? If I just got $1,000 a month worth of income from my laundromat, or maybe I grew at $1,000 a month, and if I want to grow my net $10,000 a month, I can't just do more of the same. I've got to think differently. How do I go out and get more corporate clients? How do I go out and, how do I partner with other laundromats? How do I expand to an off-site facility? You've got to think of different strategies to 10x, and it's a powerful exercise. Instead of shutting that question down and feeling overwhelmed and scared, which you probably should, because that's a scary thing to 10x your goal, instead of shutting it down, commit to writing down 10 different ways that you possibly could 10x your goal. Even if they're bad ideas. I like to do this, with my team. I like to do what I call the go circle, right? And if we've got a problem, let's say we have to buy 100 laundromats, what we'll do in the go circles, we'll say, hey, there's no bad answers. The important thing here is to spit out the first thing that comes to your mind. We'll all sit in a circle. We'll say go, and everybody just throws out an idea. One person is writing stuff down. Actually, now you could probably just use AI, but one person's writing stuff down, all the ideas, and they're probably going to be 100 terrible ideas, but there might be 3 pretty decent ones and one that'll actually get you there that's doable, right? So They don't all have to be great ideas, but commit to writing down 10 plausible ideas on how you can 10x your goal. And then see if there's one that you can actually make work. And if not, do it again until they find a way to be able to 10x your goal and then get after it. Okay. So I'm going to refer you a resource if you ended up in this all yeses all the way down the line branch here. I'm going to refer you to 10x is easier than 2x, which is an incredible book. I've mentioned it before, mind shifting. I'll have the links to all this in the show notes, laundromatresource.com/show 177. Is this 177? Is that what I said? I think so. 177. laundromatresource.com/show 177. If you're on YouTube, they'll be down below there. But 10x is easier than 2x. Transformational book. Highly recommend it. Okay. Let's go back up to, was I clear on what I wanted to accomplish this year? Yes. Did I accomplish it? Let's go to yes again. And was my goal too small? And let's say you say, nope, it wasn't too small. Listen, I'm awesome and I accomplished my goal. Here's my response to that in my flow chart. Was my goal too small? No, it wasn't. My answer, the response would be, yes, it was. And I'll refer you back over to the response to the yes. What would I have to do to 10x that goal going forward? Okay. So 10x is easier than 2x. Great resource if you find yourself in that category. In fact, even if you don't, that's a great book. Okay. So let's go back up to, did I accomplish it? And let's go to no. I think a lot of us find ourselves in this category. So if you answer that question, no, I did not accomplish it. Here's what I would say in my flow chart. Here's what I do say to myself. Did I do everything I possibly could to accomplish it? Okay. So if I look back and I reflect honestly and I say, you know what? I think I did everything I possibly could to accomplish that goal and I just fell short. Number one, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Okay. So no shame there. You probably got a lot farther than you would if you didn't have clarity on what your goal was, right? But if you say, you know what, I did do everything that I possibly could, here's your takeaway. Here's my takeaway, and maybe you can use it too. There's just something you don't know. Okay. There's just something you don't know. It's not that that goal could not have been accomplished. There's just something you don't know. And that's why you couldn't get there this year. So the solution is to get into bigger rooms. Okay. Get into bigger rooms. Here's what I mean by that. Like I said, I mean, I met this week with people doing way, way, way beyond what I'm doing. Their take home is 7-8 figures a year. Mine's not anywhere near that yet. We're going to use a lot of yets, right? And their net worths are, 8-9 figures, and they're doing big stuff, doing cool stuff. I'm in a room that's bigger than I am, right? And I'm talking to people, and I'm listening. Actually, I'm more listening than talking. I'm listening to people who have gone further than I've gone, who have built lives that are bigger than what I've built. We're solving problems bigger than the problems I'm solving right now. And I'm hearing how they did it. I'm hearing, the pitfalls that they fell into. I'm learning the lessons that they learned from them. And even beyond that, I've found that one of the biggest things that I take away from being in quote unquote bigger rooms, people who are farther down the path than I am, is that it just gives me confidence that whatever I'm trying to accomplish is possible. Even if it's not the exact same thing as what they're doing, I see people doing big things and I know that my thing is not too big to be accomplished. Okay. So if you look back and reflect and say, I didn't accomplish what I wanted to, but I did everything I could, that's probably true. but it just means that there's something more that you don't know that you need to learn in order to get to that next level. And the way you get there is to get into bigger rooms, get around people who are more successful than you and learn from them and listen and take confidence in the fact that there are bigger things that we can all do than what we're doing right now. So, okay, couple of resources I want to give you. One classic is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Talking about how do we get into bigger rooms, how to win friends and influence people. Classic, but so powerful. And then the other one, not quite as classic, but still pretty popular, is Never Eat Alone. Okay. Never eat alone. Okay. So let's jump back up a little bit. And was I clear? Yes. Did I accomplish my goals? No. Did I do everything I possibly could have in order to accomplish it? If you answer no to that one, which I think, again, this is a lot of people and I've fallen into this category before. Here's the hard question I ask myself, and maybe a hard question you should ask yourself. If you reflect back and have to admit to yourself that you didn't do everything you could to accomplish that goal this year, ask yourself this question: did I really want to accomplish that goal? Right? Because if you really want to accomplish something, we'll get it done, right? Or at least at the end of the year, we'll say, yes, we did everything we possibly could. So kind of one of those gut check moments is, did I really want to accomplish that goal? Because if I didn't do everything I possibly could, in my mind, it brings into question if I really actually wanted to accomplish it. Or if it was less of a priority than other things like scrolling on TikTok, or on a positive side, spending more time with family, right? Maybe your priorities shifted, and that's okay too. But if your answer to that is, yes, I really did want to accomplish the goal, but I just didn't do everything I possibly could have to accomplish it. Here's my answer to myself. And again, you can use this or adapt it however you want to. Did I really want to accomplish this goal? Yes. My answer to myself is no, you didn't. And the next step to take, again, it's not helpful to just say, nope, you didn't, right? But the next step to take is to dig deeper into your why. Okay. Now, the book Start With Why is incredible book. Again, one of those perspective shifting books, transformative books that has actually been a blessing and a curse for me, because it's very easy, I think, sometimes to lose that why. And for me, I'm very why driven, like the motivation behind why I'm doing the things I'm doing. If I lose sight of that why, I feel like I'm adrift at sea. I'm lost, right? So that why is something that I need to keep forefront in my mind all the time in order to actually accomplish it. Okay. So here's one exercise. Two exercises. Okay. So number one is read, Start With Why. Number two, though, here's an exercise, a pretty easy but profound exercise that you can do if you think that you did everything that you possibly could, and you really want, or you don't think you did everything you possibly could, but you do think that you really did want to accomplish that goal. I would go back to, okay, so what is my why? Why is this my goal? Why did I want to accomplish that? And do what I call the five whys. Okay. It's not my thing. It's just, it was probably in Start With Why or one of the books, somewhere. I've heard it multiple times. Right. But do what I call the 5 whys. Right. And the 5 whys, there's, maybe you said, hey, I wanted to buy 3 laundromats this year. Okay. So then I say, okay, well, why did I want to do that? I say, well, I want to leave my 9 to 5. Okay, well, why do I want to leave my 9 to 5? Right, 2, right? And I want to leave my 9 to 5 so I can spend more time with my family. Well, why do I want to spend more time with my family? Well, I want to spend more time with my family because, I feel like I've been working and, long hours and all that. And I just, I feel like I've been missing out on big occasions and big milestones. And, I was joking with my brother actually today where our families will go to like, amusement park or the beach or something without us. Sometimes when we're working and we're like, oh, dude, feel so left out, right? Maybe that's the why. You say, okay, well, why is it important to you to be involved, with your kids' lives and all that? And maybe it comes down to something like, you know what, when I was a kid, my dad worked long hours and we did, family vacations without him sometimes. We did this and that without him sometimes. And it really affected me. And I don't want to have that effect on my kids. Right. Okay. Now we've gotten to something that is touching our inner emotions, and emotions are very powerful drivers of action. Right. And we've got a pretty big why now. Right. We don't want our kids to have the experience we had, when we were growing up, with that, right? Now you've got a why that next year when you ask this question, you know, you're much more likely to have answered, yes, I've done everything I possibly could, to do this because I have such a powerful why. Okay. I butcher every quote, sorry, but there's a quote out there that basically says, the amount you accomplish has a direct correlation to how big your why is, right? So you want a powerful, meaningful, emotional why to drive you to accomplish the goals that you have. Okay. The other book, again, that will help with this is The One Thing. Okay. So start with why and The One Thing, great resources. Okay. So if you say, do you really want to accomplish this goal? And your answer to that question is no. Then I think you do the same thing. You dig deeper into your why and you say, okay, well, why didn't you do everything? Obviously you didn't have that powerful emotional why driving you to do everything you possibly could to accomplish this goal. So maybe it's time to go back to the basics and figure out what is my why. Do the 5 whys exercise there and get down to the core of, okay, what's driving me? What's getting me up in the morning and getting me moving and getting me working towards my goal? Okay. So that is the whole, yes, I was clear on my goals and here's where I ended up. Let's say your answer to that is no, because I think a lot of us are going to fall in that category. If the answer to that is no, I was not clear on my goals last year. And so therefore, I don't know if I really accomplished them. Here's your direction is let's jump into the projections. Okay. So we were reflecting in our reflections. So let's jump into projections and let's figure out how do we know what goals or what we want to accomplish in this next year or quarter or 6 months or wherever you're at. Okay. And this again is taken from this framework here is taken from The One Thing. Okay. Just straight up plagiarizing it, contextualizing it to my life, to your life, to laundromats. But I'm giving full credit here. So this is Gary Keller, Jay Papasan, I think. The One Thing, highly recommend it. Again, I'll have links to it. But this is what they call goal setting to the now. Okay. And I'm just going to go through real quick the framework of goal setting to the now. And head over to the show notes, laundromatresource.com/show 177, I believe, to download their worksheet that can help you break down goal setting to now. I'll have it for download over there for you. Okay. So here's what it comes down to. What it does, this framework does, is it starts with the very big picture. Now, for me, this is awesome. This is easy. I'm a very big picture guy. I'm big picture driven. And so that's really helpful. Some people, like my wife, maybe some of you guys are more detail people and you need the details and then work your way out. They recommend you start big and work your way down. You'll see why here in a second. Okay. So starts with a someday goal. Okay. A goal that you want to accomplish someday. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, what's one thing? This is from the one thing. Okay. So what's one thing I want to do someday? Okay. So that could be, professionally, or business wise. That could be a personal goal. But a someday goal, something that's big, maybe on that 10x is easier than 2x scale. Maybe it's, hey, I want to own a manufacturing company that streamlines the acquisition of washers and dryers for laundromat owners and gets rid of a lot of the existing problems that we have. Maybe that's your goal. Maybe it's not. Let's say your goal is, I want to own 10 laundromats one day. I heard so many people, I've mentioned this before, but I did a survey one time and it was like 93, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's close to somewhere around here. Like 93% of people said, I want to own 10 or more laundromats. Okay. So let's say that's your someday goal. I want to own 10 or more laundromats. Okay. Or whatever it is for you. Spend some time thinking of, what do I want my life to look like? If I look down the road, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however long, what do I want life to look like? And again, we can be very intentional about how we design our lives. And of course, nothing ever goes according to plan exactly, but I think you'll be surprised at how much you can accomplish when you spend some time thinking about what's my someday goal and actually work towards that. And you know what is really funny? I'm just realizing this right now as we speak. So you might, if you're watching the video, you might recognize I'm in a different location. Just over a decade ago, if you know my story, maybe you've heard this part. Just over a decade ago, I had a brilliant idea to buy a house in Hawaii. And my wife said we could do that, or we could buy a laundromat. And we bought a laundromat, and that went rough. It did not go well. However, I'm just sitting here just over a decade ago in our house that we just bought in Hawaii, which is really funny. I did not even put two and two together until right now. So that was a decade in the making of a goal that I stated very clearly, that here it is right now. And literally right across the street is the beach. So this is case in point right here. What's that someday goal? A house in Hawaii. We could be neighbors, 10 laundromats. What is it? Dream big. And I recommend that you spend some time actually thinking about this. And when you think you have that goal, that someday goal, put it through the 5 whys exercise and make sure that goal is actually the goal that you have and not a symptom of the goal that you actually have. Okay. So pick that someday goal, spend some time coming up with, what do I want my life to look like? Dude, this is wild. It's just like mind blowing me right now that I'm literally sitting in this Hawaii house, a decade later, a little over a decade later from when I originally tried to buy, a place in Hawaii. So pretty cool. Okay. So we've got our someday goal. Once we have that established, we've put it through the 5 whys, we've verified this is what we want someday. And this may change down the line, by the way, but we want to be very clear. We change, we evolve, our goals change. They get bigger as we progress further. And so, this someday goal may change on you, but be clear where you're at right now. Okay. Next, you want to set a 5-year goal. And here's the question that you want to ask. Okay. Based on my someday goal, what's the one thing I can do in the next 5 years that's going to help get me closer to that someday goal. Okay. So let's say someday I want to own 10 laundromats. Okay. If someday I want to own 10 laundromats, in the next 5 years, maybe my goal in the next 5 years is to get 4 laundromats that are all netting $7,000 a month or more. Right. So I want to try to do that in the next 5 years, get 4 laundromats netting $7,000 a month. Right. That 5-year goal is going to get me where I need to go to get to that someday goal, because it's not going to be a linear growth, right? It's going to be a little bit of that hockey stick growth. Once I've got 3 or 4 laundromats that are humming on all cylinders, it's going to be quicker and easier to add more to my portfolio if that's my one goal, if that's my one thing, my someday goal. Okay. So on your 5-year goal, based on my someday goal, what's the one thing I can do in the next 5 years to help get me to that someday goal? Okay. So once you have that, then you're going to step down again and you say 1-year goal. And you say, based on my 5-year goal, what's the one thing I can do this year to help make sure I'm on target to hit my 5-year goal? Okay. So based on that 5-year goal, what can I do this year? So maybe this year, I want to get one. I want to get one laundromat and I want to, make sure it's cash flow positive. That's my goal, right? I can spend next year, optimizing it more and getting, growing my portfolio. But this year, my goal is get one on the books under my belt and make sure it's cash flow positive, right? So again, this is an example. Do this for yourself. Okay. So now you've got your someday goal, your 5-year goal, your 1-year goal. 1 year is still a long ways away. So you jump down to your quarterly goal. Okay. And based on your 1-year goal, what's the one thing I can do this quarter to make sure I'm on track to achieve my 1-year goal? Okay. So that's going to depend on where you are in your process, right? Maybe this quarter, you're in your first quarter of that first year, and maybe your goal is, I want to reach out to 15 brokers. I want to send out 100 letters, and I want to practice analyzing 1,000 deals or whatever, right? And you can do that. And if you do those things, the likelihood that you're going to find 1 or 2 that you could put under contract is pretty high. Okay. So you can see that if I hit that goal the first quarter, I've got 3 more quarters to actually get one under contract and make sure it's cash flow positive. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to step down and say, what is our monthly goal? And the question is, this is based on my quarterly goal. What's something I can do this month? What's one thing I can do this month to help make sure I'm on pace for my quarterly goal? Right. And maybe it's getting in touch with, 5 brokers and sending out 250 letters and analyzing 250 deals or whatever. I think it was 100 letters, right? So maybe 25 letters, not 250, right? Or whatever the numbers are, right? To make sure that I'm on pace. And then you say, okay, what's my weekly goal? And I think you can see where this is going. What's my weekly goal? Based on my monthly goal, what can I do? What's the one thing I can do this week to make sure that I'm on track for my monthly goal? Then step down to the daily goal. What do I need to make sure that I am doing every day to make sure I'm on track to hit my weekly goal, so that I'm on track to hit my monthly goal, so that I'm on track to hit my quarterly goal, so that I'm on track to get my yearly goal, so that I'm on track to hit my 5-year goal, so that I'm on track to hit my someday goal. Okay. And I want to pause there for a second, because that's not the end of it, but I want to pause there. And those daily goals start merging into what we call habits. Okay. And our habits are so important. The habits that we have are so important into making us who we are as people, but also into helping turn us into who we want to be, both as people and who we want our businesses to be. So those habits are very important. And I'm just going to throw out one resource right now. There's a lot of really good books on habits. The one I'll recommend is Atomic Habits. And again, I'll put a link in, but there's a lot of really great Power of Habit, Tiny Habits. There's a whole bunch of really great habit books, but Atomic Habits, super good, super powerful book. If you're looking to establish good habits this year, that's the one I would recommend you picking up, reading, and utilizing to get rid of some bad habits, but also add in some new good habits. Okay. And so we've got our daily goals, and then it comes down to, this is goal setting to the now. So it's, what can I do right now? Based on my daily goal, what's the one thing I can do right now to make sure I'm on track to hit my daily goal, et cetera, right? And the power of that is, let's say you're trying to call, 5 brokers, this week or whatever. And maybe you're like me and you hate talking on the phone. And when I was growing up, I'd get like crazy anxiety just picking up the phone. We had the landline, right? Picking up the phone. I'd get crazy anxiety about that. I hate talking on the phone. But if I'm goal setting to the now, it emphasizes the importance of doing that action and starting it now, right? It's so easy to put off the hard things that we don't want to do. And this wasn't even on my list, but I'll add it on here. If you're struggling, actually taking actions that are the things that you don't want to do, Eat That Frog is a great book for that one. Weird title, but you'll get it once you read it if you haven't read it yet. But Eat That Frog is a good one to accomplish the things we don't want to do that we have to do anyways, which I'm not the best at, I'll just admit right now. Okay, so goal setting to the now takes you all the way to, what can I do right now that's going to help get me towards my someday goal? That's essentially what it comes down to, because our goals are accomplished. I say this all the time. Our goals are accomplished by the actions that we take, not by what we learn, not by who we listen to, not by how inspired we feel. It's the actions that we take. And goal setting to the now, make sure that the actions that we're taking now and today are the right actions to help us achieve our someday goals, or to help us build the lives that we want to build. Okay, I feel like that was a lot of stuff, but hopefully for you, that was really good. I get so excited about this because I see this as this framework that I shared in the beginning. That's just my little framework that I put together, coupled with this goal setting to the now from the one thing. I feel like this is just a framework that you can use to help make sure you're building the life that you want to build. And that's what Laundromat Resource is about, really. It's about laundromats. Yes, I love laundromats as an asset class, as a business. Yes, I know most of you guys do too, or you're itching to get in it so that you can also feel the laundry high that we all feel over here. But let's not lose sight of the fact that business and our businesses in laundry are there to help us have an impact in the community and to build the lives that we want to build. And so I just want to encourage you. This is not one of those listen to it, feel good episodes. This is one of the, okay, let me sit down and actually go through this and think about this, invest some time in this framework this year, or wherever you're at in the year when you're listening, invest some time into this. And I think you'll be surprised at how far you get in the right direction. We're talking sniper, not shotgun here. We want to, start heading. And this is something that, again, this is not a set it and forget it thing. This is something we want to revisit at least every year, probably quarterly. And parts of this we have to revisit monthly, weekly, daily, and and now, like all the nows, basically. Like, what am I doing now, right, to help me get that someday goal? So hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me know. I would be curious to know if you guys, maybe I was just spewing a bunch of stuff you already knew and stuff that you already do, and you're crushing it. And I would love to hear that. If you're crushing it, and if this is something that was helpful to you or something you're going to sit down and actually do, I'd love to hear about that too. So hit me an email, Jordan, Jordan, like Michael Jordan, easy, basically look just like him. So basketball skills, pretty close. Jordan at laundromatresource.com. I love to hear your goals for this year, your someday goals. And listen, we've also put together Laundromat Playbook, and the whole goal of that is to provide the knowledge, the tools, the resources, the coaching, and the atmosphere to help you hit your someday goals, to help you build the lives that you want to build through the vehicle of laundromats. If that's something that you're interested in, you want to hear more about, you want to, see our frameworks that we've built out to help you go from wherever you're at, whether that's buying your first laundromat, optimizing your existing laundromat or laundromats, or scaling your portfolio either through adding more locations or adding pickup and delivery or drop off laundry. That is what we built Laundromat Playbook for. We've got one-on-one coaches to meet with you to help you through all of that, because all of this is really tough to do on your own. That's one thing I really learned along the way, is that this is so hard to implement all this stuff on your own, and you need somebody who can encourage you and give you some guidance along the way. And we've got experienced laundromat owners to help you along the way doing that, and a whole lot of really fun stuff there. So check out laundromatresource.com/playbook if that's something you're interested in. And hey, we'll see you next week on the Laundromat Resource Podcast. Peace.